Nugent here, doing a quick session on managing your customer journey and events along it. It's our first LinkedIn Live, so getting some of the technology working has been a bit of a challenge, so we'll see how we get on today. Who am I? Many of you will know me through my LinkedIn profile, or who are in this event know me already anyway, but to give you a quick summary, I very much work within sales and marketing, business growth, but the connection between strategy and customers. The more and more I work with this, the more I see positioning strategy being more important than any digital technology. But I do love the intersection of technology and these four components. That's where I work most of my time. It's also what formed me. I'm Irish. I lived in many different countries, as many Irish people do. I lived in the UK for about 6 odd years, did my higher education there, and actually learned the value of growth companies there. I visited 122 within 2 years at one stage in some of the work I was doing there, and 4 of those stuck out, high growth companies. It's one of the reasons I went to Sweden after that, joined Ericsson Radio Systems. That was mobile technology, was starting and working within business development within that. And got very much a flavor for how technology actually is evolving and changing a lot of what we do. After that, I worked in a startup in Malmo, which is a mobile data startup, as the mobile technology allowed many new options. Mobile data was one of them, so I joined that startup. I was there for just about a year, and I then started my own business in 99 or 2000, somewhere between the two of those. And it was on analysis of the sector and stuff like that. After that, I started another company, which was a B2B company, helping others to sell mobile content online, and that was very successful. So we were actually a technology enabler and content enabler at that time. And then we decided to go direct. So I built my own direct-to-consumer business across, I think it was 5 countries at one stage, between Italy, Germany, UK, Sweden, Norway, and Spain actually as well. So many different countries direct to consumer. This is what crystallized my use of digital for sales. And what I wanted to do then is understand how can we make that work in other sectors. And I've done a lot of work in the home improvement sectors, built my own CRM system for this. This is before the HubSpots of the world came around. And I'm working within that field for a number of years. Right now, today's session, I want to spend time on looking at buyers and customers' journey. It is the crux of all businesses. You know, if we don't get customers, we don't have people to pay the bills. It's pretty simple. So we want as many customers as we can into our business. To do that, and before we can use any technology, we should understand how they buy. Digital and technology has enabled consumers to buy in a different way today. And I say consumer, I don't mean just direct-to-consumer businesses. It's also business-to-business. So any person who's buying, digital has enabled that. So I want to go through that first. It is the most important step for any company wanting to understand how to use digital technology. It is not to use the digital tech, it's to actually understand what we're trying to achieve first. And I'll take you through some of those steps and some events within that, and then where to go from here. Buyer versus customer. The buyer is very much looking to solve their need. So I would call that a buyer's journey, the first step. We should understand what do buyers do. We then call them customers, and it's often called then a customer journey. But there's 2 sides to it, and we need to decide how do we provide the benefits, the value as it were, and do we meet the need? If you think like this, it becomes a lot simpler. It's no longer about your product. Your product enables you to provide a benefit that meets the need of a buyer. And that's the cycle we want to get working. All too many companies talk about what they do. Too few of them talk about what's the benefit or the need that they meet. So this is very much what I'd say two sides of the same coin, but quite important to distinguish the two. So when we're mapping customer journeys, we'd always start with, what does your customer do? That's the buyer. What do they do before they buy from you? What steps do they take? And then your customer journey is very much, what actions do you take? How else can you help customers buy? And that's how you work it through. Now, typical events along a buyer's journey here. This is a simplified journey, but it gives you a very good idea for the various steps. So in the, let's say, the lead generation stage, and we can have a discussion about what is a lead. That's for another time. I'll do a live session about that. We then have another number of steps to go through before they buy. And after they buy, obviously people will consume it. Hopefully leave you a review. And that's what you need to work on. So if we just leave it to chance, we won't understand all of these steps along the way. The more we understand these steps, the easier it is for us to help customers buy from us, and the better we do. Now, as soon as we do a journey like this, we immediately split it into 3 sections. Lead generation, lead to sale, and after sale. There's various definitions for what a lead is and lead generation, but it's the early stage in the buyer's journey. What solutions are out there? Who can help me? Those kind of questions come up. And then in the lead to sale is, okay, now I know who can help me, and I know I need a solution. So what's the best way to evaluate these? And then buy. So this is the journey people go through. And for every business, this can be quite painful to draw out. We're actually in the middle of a workshop session at the moment. And as one of the participants said, I said, this is quite hard to do, especially a first round. And he says, I must be doing it right then, because I'm finding it really hard. That's a good sign, because you get an idea then for how your customers buy, and you really think from their perspective. Classic conversion rates are basically sales conversion rate, which is often website visitors to number that buy from you. And we hear classically, okay, 1.75%, 2%, 1.5% are kind of good numbers. I would debunk most of those numbers, but that's, again, not my focus today, because we need to understand the detail that goes in behind it. Other numbers to look at is your lead to sale conversion rate. That can be anything between 10% to 50%, depending on the business you're in, depending on the actions you take. But understanding this is what I'm getting at. What happens in between? How can you impact it? Otherwise, it's just a number. So if I know my conversion rate, let's say, is 10%, and I'm not looking at what happens in between those events. So let's say event 4 here and event 9. So somebody has contacted us, and then somebody buys. If I don't know what happens in between, I can't impact the percentage, how these two link together. So this is why it's so important to understand what's going on in that process. And these are basically events along the way. So on a buyer's journey, you can know these events, or if you don't know these events, it's basically an unknown customer journey. And the biggest problem with that is you're surprised all the time. So why did they buy? I'm not quite sure. Why did they become a lead? I don't really know. What did they do before that? I don't know. So these are all the questions and problems you have. You're surprised, and you're leaving everything very much to chance. Whereas if you understand the events, and I'm not saying you get it 100% right, but at least you have maybe 10, 12 events along the buyer's journey here. When it's known, you can then manage those events. So when you get a lead, you know why they're there, because you've designed a page for them to engage with you. They've asked you a question. They've made a request for information. They've maybe requested a demonstration or a demo. So you have an idea what led to that, because if you know what that event is, you can then backtrack, and you can use analytics for this to see what did they do beforehand. If you know that, you can then impact the decision to get more people to take that action. And you align that with how your customer buys. This is the trick to it. If you fight how customers buy, then you're working against them. Whereas if you embrace it, it actually works very much in your favor. And I'll show you why in a second. So if we use the events to understand and manage the journey, we can align with what we do. So say, for example, somebody is browsing and they're not yet committed. They don't know really their needs maybe yet. And if your only thing in your site is buy now, what do you think is going to happen? They're most likely to bounce. Whereas if you align with where they are in their journey, so let's say when they're browsing, they're probably looking for top tips. They're probably looking for answers to their questions. They're not looking to buy right now. So understanding these steps, and this is a very simplistic view, but even having 3 stages within your business will help enormously, because then you'll have content that matches the stages. everyone has some form of sales pipeline, whether you have it graphically laid out or not, because customers are buying from you. So they're going through different stages along the way. Here's again a simplistic sales pipeline where you working basically with marketing and sales. They should be working very much together. And here we basically have an information request coming in, which triggers an email sequence, which then has a main focus to request a demo. As soon as they request a demo, it goes to sales. So they do the demonstration, they discuss with the client their needs, and then there can be a email sequence about the benefits of their product. It can be related to the demonstration discussion they had to try and, I suppose, show more empathy with that client to see, will they then buy? Some of them won't, some of them might be unsure and they're down here, and you could remove them from that sequence and put them onto another sequence. So you're beginning to design how people flow into your business. In this case, we're very much going like this, and back up to sales, and over here, and hopefully to the buy, and then your request for a referral. So you have a flow through your business, and this is what I call a business design. And again, having a high level simplistic view helps enormously, because now sales and marketing know how to work together. And it's not a handover. It's never as simple as that today. So there's sales, in this case, it can be marketing, then sales, then back to marketing, back to sales, and back and forth. It's actually very much of a team effort these days when it's done right. And the technology helps us to do some of that. One of the other aspects here that I want to cover is you could have existing customers. How did they enter your business? You have new customers. How did they enter your business? And they can be quite different. So understanding that divide is important. Usually, you can accelerate existing customers. So the existing customers I'm saying are here, maybe they go straight into a call. Maybe, depends on the design of your business. And depends on what you're selling. The two important decisions to make here is, what is the role of your website along that sales pipeline? Are you trying to get visitors to your site when they're early in their customer journey, so they'll be requesting information? Or are you just having it for fulfillment, so for the purchase, like an e-commerce type of arrangement? If that's the case, early in the customer journey, where do you engage with your prospective customers? And in many cases, that might be on social. So understanding how social media and your website work together is quite important, and getting alignment there. What I often find is social media can be great in the early stages, so you can do lead generation, for example. Social media can be very good also to remain top of mind along the way, and then the website can be very much towards the latter stages of your customer journey. It doesn't mean people don't visit in the early stages either. Often they do, because they want to see what you're about. Are you credible? But you need to make these decisions. How is that going to work? And then what happens in between these stages? So once you get a high level view, you can then populate it out with more detail, more events. That will help you to manage the sales pipeline even better. Analytics data should support your business here. It's not a matter of measuring stuff. Oh, I've got 100 visitors today. In a way, who cares? What did they do? Did they follow the path that you expect? How many of them bought? Why did they buy? What events did they go through before they bought? These are the things we need to understand. And this is where analytics can be really helpful. So a few high-level ones here. Sorry, before I go into that, questions to ask per event. So you might have 10 events, 12 events, 6 events, I don't know. But ask yourself these questions. What happened before that event? So that could be when someone just bought. That could be when someone became a lead, requested information. So that could be when they requested a demo. So what did they do before that? Try and understand those steps beforehand. Because the simple reason is the step beforehand helped them to make that request. So how can you make that better? That's all you're trying to do here. And how can you influence it? So can you improve? And once we understand the events and the flow of a customer through our business, we can then manage it, we can influence it, obviously then we can improve it. That's the whole idea here. all too many people take analytics and think it's just a matter of putting the script on the website and then the count numbers. Analytics should be designed to support how your business is designed. It should be set up to do that. It should measure the events you want along your customer journey. It should measure and events that you can improve, you can manage. That's what it's all about. And then it can be really, really helpful. Other things to bear in mind here is, how does the mix of price, quality, and service vary between early in the customer journey and at the time of purchase? I'll give you an example here. I do quite a lot in the home improvement sector. Actually, all types of home improvement in furniture and everything like that, and in kitchens and in worktops and home office and all that kind of stuff. And quality is really important, and it's important especially in the early part of the customer journey. The more research the individual does or the buyer does, the more they realize that the top companies, generally speaking, the quality is pretty good. They're all fairly similar. And then quality, in a sense, is standard. So it matters less at the time of purchase. So it's quite interesting to see how it drifts down. We've done surveys on this as well, and we can see quality is really important a long way out from the purchase decision, less important at the purchase decision time. It doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that most of the companies have made a good job of helping the person understand quality is a given. So then service and price can be more important, but the mix of those three helps with your positioning. So how does that change over time? How do their needs evolve over time? And asking yourself these questions and the buyer preferences help you understand how to do this. You can get really sophisticated with this, because the mix of price, quality, and service can vary, which means your retargeting campaign, especially with business to consumer companies, can change. So in the early stage of a customer journey, let's say after your first visit to the website, you might be emphasizing more on quality. Later in the customer journey, when it's maybe a month later, maybe it's after the second, third, or fourth visit to your site, you will do a retargeting campaign that'll focus much more on value or delivery times, if that's important within your particular business, and less on quality because it's a given. Right? So this is how you can begin to use these preferences to help sales. What does the website traffic do? So here is a very simple funnel with all the traffic. Then we have good traffic, because you often have bots, so it's good to take that away. Then you have the percentage that browse. In this case, we have something like 24% of browsing, and something like 2.9% became leads, and actually it says 0% here is below 1 who became customers in this case. It's just as an example. But as a high-level picture, to be able to see all your visitors, how many of them are browsing, how many of them engaged with you, how many of them bought. It's a great picture to have. Then you can start, let me skip that one and go to the next one. Then you could begin to see what traffic sources are most important. So if you have customers here, what's the most important traffic source? Where are they coming from? Your visitors, with the initial website visitors, where are they coming from? And then you can begin to understand, how do these align? So in other words, are you getting the right traffic? Now I have a very interesting case where display traffic is really important for website visitors. And for customers, at the moment where they become customers, and actually even leads, that is not a very relevant source. However, when we do track some attribution, we can see that the initial visit was from display, and they did nothing. They browsed basically. Then they came back via search, or came back via direct, basically typing in the URL, and then converted to buy. So you can't discount either what happens in the visitor stage and where the traffic is coming from. So understanding that picture is quite important. You might have different lead types or events, if you want to call them that. Sometimes we put an event rather than a lead. Let's say this one here could be visiting a pricing page, for example. That's often an important event, especially for SaaS companies. You know, when you see a new one, you often go on to see what's the pricing structure like, to see is it in the frame of what you want to do. In some cases, it's not. In some cases, it might be a contact us page. It could be where to find a reseller. And that could be an important event. And then you understand those people are trying to find you. They're trying to go visit you. They're trying to find where they can buy your product. And that's an important event type that you begin to look at. And then we can see which traffic source helps with engagement. And I don't mean social engagement with likes and clicks and things like that. I'm talking about taking an action that's appropriate to your business. Which source actually helps that? Then you can refine your media plan. Now, you can simplify a lot of this, but understanding it is what I'm after here. Then seeing which traffic seems to convert best for you. And I would say I don't think I've got any case where email is not the outstanding one. Now this example here is a very specific one where the initial request is made for information and then the subsequent emails are sent out to try and request a demo. So as you get people talking to you online. Either the same types of numbers between 30 and 40%, actually 35, 36% is usually the top, where it is to go visit in a shop, for example, but similar for demo. So email should be an important source for you here. Obviously, organic search is important, always is. Paid search is often as good. And social is usually lower, usually. And it's usually because it's very similar to browsing traffic, which we haven't listed on this one. No, it's not listed on this particular example because it's more disruption. You know, you're in your social feed or you're browsing websites and see an ad. That's disruption for your current activity. So your level of engagement from those are usually less, but it helps with the awareness phase. So then it has a place to play. Another very important factor here is how many page visits have they visited on your site? It's often one of the key factors. I think HubSpot built most of its business on this in the early days. You know, if someone reads many pages on your website, they're probably interested in what you do. They're probably then a good lead. Therefore, you should talk to them, right? If they haven't visited any pages, or basically have to visit one page, and then they bounced, or they made a request but didn't read anything further, they're less likely to be interested in you. It's a fairly simple measure, but it's a very accurate measure as well. And understanding which traffic source seems to browse the most is also important. And here we have paid display as an example, and that's typically quite low. It's a disruption advertising. It doesn't mean it's not of value. Gets them through the initial awareness, and maybe then they'll come back with organic search because they'll know, okay, you are in that business. Let's see what you can do, and then they browse more. That's often the case. The unknown here is very high. Unknown is often email. It's often sources we just can't track. And it's often also only a few. So in this case, I can't actually remember how many, but this may only be 20 or 30 visitors. So therefore, it's a little bit of an anomaly. There's one good example I read about recently, which is Golftown, and they were looking at collecting emails in their shops. And when they did their tracking, they can see that the value of an email address collected in the shop is 10 times the value of a digital email. So if somebody's on their website and makes a request, or if somebody's in their shop and gives them their details, the one in the shop is 10 times more likely, as more valuable to them. Now, they would not know that if they weren't tracking. So understanding and having a tag beside where do you get the lead, where do you get the email address in this case, is very important. Because then what you do is you make sure within your retail environment that you're actually collecting email addresses because people are in your shop. So you've made an impression. It's much more valuable. The amount of shops who do not do this, it astounds me. I have worked with jewelry companies on this, and I'm still astounded as to why they don't do it. Of all businesses, theirs is a fantastic one because they can help not just provide jewelry, but they help their clients solve a problem. In other words, gifting. And they can put alerts, they can tailor it, they can do so much with this for their clients to also drive sales via email. And they don't do it. It's quite extraordinary. But this case they did, and they can track it. So quick summary is to understand what your customers do. How do they buy? What actions do they take? Who buys? Why do they buy? What benefits are they seeking? And when I say who, it's very much understanding which type of customer is buying from you. Is it the same as the one you think you're selling to? For startups, this can be a bit of an issue. For companies who are in existence for a long time, it shouldn't be. But understanding this and not taking it for granted is actually very important. Understanding what role does your website play within that whole process. What do you need to know to improve the sales process? So what data do you need? Is there any metrics you'd like to measure? What actions, so you can design actions to take? And do you see any patterns along the way? Sorry, there's one in the middle. Some of the patterns could be related to the traffic source. So what traffic source seems to convert best for you? You should know this. If you don't know this, put it top of your list to try and find out. Google Analytics or any other analytics will help you with that. But if you haven't the events designed, if we haven't the events defined, we won't be able to pick this up. So this is why understanding how customers buy, what are the events along the way, measure those events with analytics, you will begin to get answers to all of these questions. That means you can then manage the buying process, which means you can get more sales, which means you can be a much more profitable business and actually get a business system in place that helps you to drive sales and growth. And the main guide, and the one thing I want to leave you with, is that if you let customers' actions be the guide, that's what will make it work. Because if you do that, you can then manage those actions. You can help customers to take those actions. Listen, thank you for listening today. And any messages, any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Connect with me on LinkedIn or just post a question. Happy to answer. See you again.